ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। Sri Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita Srimad Kathita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, as recorded by M. Sri Mahendranath Gupta, a disciple and apostle of the Master. Sri Ramakrishna Bhakta Sange Kamala Kutire Sri Ramakrishna or Sri Yukta Keshav Chandra Sen. Sri Ramakrishna in the company of devotees and Kamal Kutir in the company of Keshav Chandra Sen and others. শ্রীযুক্ত ত্রৈলোক্য গান গাইতেছেন। গান গাইতে গাইতে সন্ধ্যার বাতি জ্বলা হইল, গান চলিতে লাগিল। Trilokanath Sannal was singing, and as he was singing, it just became dusk, Sandhya, the twilight, and the lights were lit. গান শুনিতে শুনিতে ঠাকুর হঠাৎ দণ্ডায়মান, আর মার নাম করিতে করিতে সমাধিস্থ। কিঞ্চিত প্রকৃতস্থ হইয়া নিজে নৃত্য করিতে করিতে গান ধরিলেন। So as he was listening to the song, Sri Ramakrishna started repeating the name of Mother, stood up, completely absorbed in samadhi. At that time, the picture was taken, which we see. Hridayaram is supporting him. That was the famous picture. It is standing like that. So after he regained some normal consciousness, he started dancing and sang the following song. সুরাপান করি না আমি সুদা খাই জয় কালী বলে, মনু মাতালে মাতালে করে মধু মাতালে মাতাল বলে। সুরাপান করি না আমি, I don't drink wine, but সুদা খাই, I consume or drink the nectar, sudha, amrita, taking the name of Kali. Manu matale matale kore, my mind becomes intoxicated like a drunkard, and those who look upon this state of intoxication think that I have drunk wine. Sri Ramakrishna always used to say, unless you get something higher, the lower cannot be given up. This is a very standard principle in spiritual life, as in any life. In order to give up the lower, you have to take something higher. There is a famous principle which is usually attributed to Albert Einstein, in which he says, a scientific principle, no problem can be solved at the same level at which the problem was initially created. It's a very interesting statement. I repeat the statement. No problem can be solved at the same level at which the problem was initially created. If a problem is created at a lower level, in order to solve the problem, you have to go to a higher level so that the problem is solved. The two ways in which the problem is solved, one is to find a solution at the same level, but that solution once again contains within it other problems. You try to solve it at that level, then many other problems then arise and so on. So no problem can be solved at the same level at which the problem was initially created. So when you go to a higher level, the problem is solved by becoming dissolved. So you should make a distinction between solving a problem and dissolving a problem. the problem becomes solved because the problem ceases to exist, having been dissolved at a higher level of consciousness. I'll give a simple example. Suppose a tiger is chasing you in dream, and you run and run and run, the most serious problem of your life and death problem. And you perspire, you are about to swoon, suddenly you wake up. Then you say, there is no tiger, there is nobody chasing you, and you feel so terribly relieved. Was the problem solved? Yes. Not at that level of the dream in which you could escape the tiger, but at a different level of consciousness called the waking state, in which the problem ceases to be a problem. The problem of the chasing tiger was solved by the problem having been dissolved at a different level of consciousness. So you make a distinction between solving a problem at the same level at which the problem is initially created, which contains within it another problem. You solve that problem, you go to a different problem, and so on. Endlessly you keep solving a problem at the same level, inviting another problem, solving that problem, creating another problem, and so on and on and on. Now, if there is a change of consciousness, you raise the consciousness to a different level, then the problem just dissolves in that consciousness and therefore ceases to be a problem. Can you call it solving a problem? Yes and no. The problem was solved not at the same level by seeking a solution at that level, but by the problem having been transcended and dissolved at a different level of consciousness. I can quote an example from my own life. I had gone for Durga Puja in Bombay 25-30 years ago. So the Swami in charge there, he requested me to bring some things from Calcutta because those things were not readily available in Bombay. The Chandmala, for example, for the decoration. Various kinds of decorative pieces. So I took quite a few pieces, traveling by train, and the train stops in the Dadar station just for 2 minutes. I was in a great hurry to get down. When just about to get down, in my hurry and anxiety, I just forgot the Chandamala and got down. When I reached the ashrama, the Swami in charge asked me, hey, where are the Chandamalas? Have you brought them? Then I said, oh, Maharaj, I've forgotten it. I felt so bad. Then I said, no, don't worry, we'll purchase something. I'll get somebody else to get it. I felt so terribly upset. How could I make such a stupid mistake? I regretted and regretted. Anyway, nothing could be done. So after a few days, because my unconscious mind was so deeply affected by this mistake, I had a dream. I was traveling in a train and I was carrying a bag containing very important documents relating to something. As in the waking state, the forgetting of the Chandamala, I got down from the train. I forgot that box containing very important documents, got down. After the train had left, I remembered I had forgotten. I was chasing the train had left. So chased and chased, talked to the station master. I went up to the yard at which the train was finally positioned, I was panting, I was sweating, I was crying. Suddenly I woke up. What a relief! I have solved the problem of the missing box. Now tell me, have I solved the problem of the missing box? The answer is yes and no. No, because I did not solve the problem of the missing box by finding the box in the same state of consciousness at which I lost it in the dream. Yes, because the problem of the missing box no longer exists because I moved on to a different state of consciousness. This is an extremely important scientific and spiritual phenomenon which we need to think about. Sri Ramakrishna solved all problems of life. Swami Brahmananda, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Sarada Devi, many of the direct disciples are all of them. How could they live in this world with all the problems? They lived in this world because they transcended the problem of living in the world by moving on to a higher level of consciousness. That is the only permanent solution to all the problems that we are facing. Don't chase the problems at that level and try to solve them at that level. You may try and try, but every solution that you get of a problem at that level will engender newer and newer problems to solve, and you will be caught in a chain of endless problems with endless solutions giving rise to newer and newer problems, and you end up by being caught in a mesh and a network of unsolved problems at that level. That's a very interesting phenomenon in life. So spiritual solution to any problem says, solve the problem by moving on to a different level of consciousness. Just like the problem of the missing box and the missed Chandamala or the chasing tiger, these problems in the dream state have been solved by moving on to the waking state, which is a totally different state of consciousness, resulting in the dissolution of the problem rather than solution of the problem at that level of consciousness. Think about this very carefully. Meditate upon this. This is what is known as the spiritual solution to your problem. Seek a spiritual solution. Swami Brahmananda, Swami Vivekananda, the Holy Mother Sharada Devi, of course Ramakrishna, they all the time solve the problems by moving on to a different level and thereby spiritually solving those problems by dissolving the problem. The problem ceases to be a problem and therefore there is no problem to be solved. In Vedanta, this is called Amani Bhava. Suppose a thought disturbs you, your mind is agitated, you become confused, you cry, you're worried about something. However much you try, however much you meditate, however much you chant, however much you pray, this thought just doesn't leave you. We see that every day in life. And you go to a psychiatrist, you go take pills, you take sleeping pills to be able to sleep. Once again, that is moving on to a different state. I can't bear this sorrow anymore. Somebody has betrayed me. I am broke. I can't bear this. So you take a deep sleeping pill. And very often, unfortunately, people take alcohol to be able to forget this problem. Drugs, alcoholism, sleeping pills. Why? Because they move on to a different state called sleep, in which the problem of the waking state doesn't exist. But unfortunately, they come back, the same problem persists. When you drink wine, you move on to a different state of consciousness, unconscious and subconscious, where you think this problem doesn't exist. The same pattern. So now, can you apply the same principle of alcoholism, drug addiction, to a spiritual solution? This is what Ramakrishna is hinting. Because why he is using these examples is because our minds are so worldly, full of temptations, tinged and colored with hundreds of thousands of desires, ambitions, bickerings, acrimony, hatred, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, lust, anger, delusion, pride, envy, greed. Our minds are full of these. Now we understand the worldly solution, alcoholism, drug addiction. They are extreme cases which no spiritual aspirant worth the name resorts to. But we resort to, if at all, praying to God and crying to Him, or calling up some friends and say, oh, I'm so broke. That from the other side, he or she is also equally broke. And you get some kind of a consolation which doesn't last long. Then go on a pilgrimage or go on a long trip, carrying the problem in your heart all the time. Can you kill the problem by killing the mind, killing thought? The problem arises in thought, in the mind, and disturbs you endlessly. Can you kill it by killing the mind itself? Can thought and the mind commit suicide? Can you commit mental suicide? Thought should come to an end. The mind becomes no mind. Manas becomes amani bhava. Amani bhava, the Mandukya, etc., is mentioned, which means the mind becoming mindless or no mind. The problems arise in the mind, and the problems will cease to be when the mind is killed. Change of consciousness from the waking state to the dream state and vice versa solves the problem to some extent, but the problem doesn't go because the mind still exists and persists. Go to a higher level of consciousness. You get a higher mind. Even that is not the solution, the Vijnanamaya. So go still higher, the Anandamaya. Still higher, beyond Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. And you enter into a state in which the mind just ceases to exist. Or, to put it positively, the mind itself takes the form of Brahman. Everything becomes Brahmamaya. The whole world gets transformed as Brahmamaya, the form of Brahman. And there is no problem, there is no solution. And there is no you or I to face the problem to be solved. It may appear very theoretical, utopian, almost impossible, but the sages and saints over millennia upon millennia have proved, realized, and documented their experiences to show that this is possible. These documents are called the great scriptures of the world religions, The Gita, the Upanishads, now the latest, the Kathamrita in Hinduism, and the other religions in the world. All the saints and sages, incarnations of God, have testified that this is possible. Two important paths have been prescribed. The path in which the mind and the ego are completely killed by surrender to God. The mind is surrendered to God. All the thoughts become godly. Then the mind ceases to be the mind. The Bhagavad Gita exhorts Arjuna, Sri Krishna says, through Arjuna, all of us, Manumana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Manumana, your mind should become me. Madhbhakta, you become completely devoted to me. Madhyaji, worship me. Mam namaskuru, you prostrate before me. You means the ego. The ego, the mind, everything prostrates flat before God, gets dissolved in His divine, majestic, vast, infinite presence. Mayyeva mana adhatsva mayi buddhim niveshaya. Completely fix your mind upon me and make your buddhi, your intelligence, intellect merge in me, niveshaya. Just like the rivers enter the ocean, completely lose their individuality and ceases to be rivers anymore, the mind, when it is fixed on the Lord and made to enter into the being of God, the mind ceases to be the mind. Yatha nadyas chandamana samudre astam gachanti namarupe vihaya tatha vidvan namarupat vimukta parat param purusham upaiti divyam Mundakopanishad. Just like all the rivers enter the ocean and lose their individuality as different rivers with different names and forms, Ganga, Yamuna, Kaveri, all of them lose their individuality, their separate names and forms, and are called just the ocean. In exactly the same way, the sage, the man of knowledge, enters into Brahman, becomes one with it, completely loses his individual existence, his ego and the mind. The individual mind no longer exists. There is only the huge cosmic mind, the Hiranyagarbha Ishvara. This is one path, the path of bhakti or devotion. In the path of knowledge, you go for vichara. Inquire, deeply inquire, go deeper and deeper and deeper into your innermost consciousness and ask, who is this I? Koham, who am I? When you go on inquiring, as Ramakrishna says, just like peeling of an onion, if you keep on peeling the onion layer by layer, ultimately you see there is nothing, no kernel at all inside. So what you have inside is nothingness, the void, the shunya, which is another name for Purnata, which is the Atman. Vedanta calls this the Atman, the Purna. Buddhism, the Madhyamika Buddhism, called the Shunya. Shunya is complete void of any individuality or duality or relative existence. So when you ask Koham, two paths come to you. Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu, which is the path of bhakti, not I, but thou, O Lord. Soham, Soham, the path of knowledge. I am that infinite self, I am that infinite consciousness. Aham vrikshasya reriva kirti prishtham gireriva urdhvapavitro vajaneva swamritamasmi dravinagam savarchasam sumedha amritokshitaha. Taittiriya Upanishad. Trishanku, the great sage, sang about his realization in this way. I am that infinite ocean of consciousness. My majesty, my glory is like that of a huge Himalayan mountain, immeasurably great. And I am the root of the entire tree of relative existence. Ashtavakra Samhita, for example. Glorious descriptions of the realization of the infinitude which the sage feels when he realizes that Brahman. Mayyananta mahambodho आश्चर्यं जीवविचयः उज्जन्ति घ्नन्ति खेलन्ति प्रविशन्ति स्वभावतः. मयि अनंत महाम्बोधो, I am that infinite ocean of consciousness. In that infinite ocean of consciousness which is my real nature, waves rise, so many worlds and jivas, beings, living, non-living beings, various worlds, jagat, all of them arise like waves in the infinite ocean which I am, remain for some time, and then get merged in the same infinite ocean. I am that infinite ocean of consciousness. Just even to think about these realizations, chant these slokas and meditate upon them, gives you such an enormous elevation. All your depression goes away. This is the Vedantic psychotherapy which was popularized in the modern times of Swami Vivekananda. Swami was very fond of Ashtavakra Samhita. Initially, he was reluctant, but Sri Ramakrishna almost forced him to read it till what he read entered deep into his consciousness and completely transformed the crying Vivekananda, always feeling I am low, I am small, into a paragon of Vedantans. And with tremendous conviction, he preached it to the world stage, in the world pulpit. He was under the influence of Brahma Samaj. He said, "Oh Lord, you are the King and the Lord of all the worlds. The three worlds you rule over. And I am a beggar, penniless, akinchan, bhikhari, orphaned. I have nothing. How can I ask you, O infinite, majestic Lord, to come and stay in my heart?" This was Narendranath. Tumi Tribhuvananath Ami Bhikhari Anath Kemone bolibo tomai Esho mama hridaye Jabe ki dinamar. One of the two earliest songs which is sang before Sri Ramakrishna, Jabe ki he dinamar, Manu chalo nija niketone. That was Narendranath. Remember how Narendranath, the crying, thinking himself a despicable, poor, beggarly, was transformed by the Midas touch of Sri Ramakrishna, the golden touch, into a paragon of Advaitins. That Swami Vivekananda, that Narendranath transformed as Swami Vivekananda, crying with his clarion call in the world stage. What did he say? Never forget the glory of human nature. Buddhas and Christs are but the waves of the infinite ocean which I am. I am that infinite ocean of consciousness. And the various incarnations, what to speak of the ordinary jivas, Buddhas and Christ are the ways which I am. I identify myself with that infinite, formless ocean of consciousness, which is formless, which is nameless, which is beyond Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha. Ashabdam Asparsham Rupam Avyayam Tatharasam Nityam Agandhavachayat Anadjanantam Mahatav Param Dhruvam Nichayatan Mrityu Mukhat Pramuchyate. Kathopanishad. Realizing that which is beyond Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha, which is eternal, Nitya, which is beyond time, space and causation, one goes beyond death. Tameva viditva ati mrityumeti nanyah pantha vidyate ayanaya. Realizing Him alone, you go beyond death. Nanyah pantha vidyate ayanaya. There is no other path except this. These are not mere stories, these are not mere words. They are charged with the pratyaksha anubhuti, direct realization, sakshad, aparokshad brahma anubhuti, direct perception, immediate perception and realization of the infinite and the absolute Brahman. Escape this, if you like, into the higher realization. People say, oh, you people have escaped into sannyasa, escaped into the monastery in order to solve the problems of the worldly life. The answer to that is, everybody escapes. You escape through touring, moving around and seeing places. Somebody escapes through alcoholism and drug. Somebody escapes through engaging oneself in writing books and songs and so on. At slightly higher level, somebody escapes in social service, selfless service. Again, the sorrow comes back. So why not escape through a higher realization of the God's infinite majesty and glory? Sri Ramakrishna was called Pagol, a crankish, mad person. Sri Ramakrishna did not protest. He said, yes, of course I am mad. But isn't everybody mad? জগতে সকলে তো পাগল। কেউ টাকার জন্য পাগল, কেউ পদের জন্য পাগল, কেউ মেয়ের জন্য পাগল। প্রত্যেকে যখন বিভিন্ন রকম পাগলামে আছে, আমি ঈশ্বরের জন্য পাগল হলাম, তাতে কি হয়েছে? Everybody is mad. Somebody is mad after a woman, somebody mad after money, somebody mad after power and position. For a change, let me be mad after God. What is that to you? So this is the surest way of solving. Nanyah pantha vidyate ayanaya. There is just no other way to have a permanent solution to the problems of sorrow. Tarati shokam atmavit. Repeatedly this has been mentioned in our scriptures, the Upanishads and the Gita. Only the realization of the Atman or Brahman can solve the problem of sorrow, take you beyond sorrow. Arjuna, who was depressed, who was sorrowing, was given the highest medicine of Atmajnana. Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankara, the great commentator, asks this question. Why is it that Arjuna was given this highest medicine of Atmajnana in order to take him away from this depression? Then he says Arjuna was immersed and drowning in that Mahadadhi, the great ocean of sorrow, Shoka Moha, sorrow and delusion. because of the arising of the feeling of I and mine. Aham esham mama ete iti bhranti pratyaya nimitta. Because of this bhranti pratyaya, the wrong notion, the confused understanding that these people are mine and I am theirs. Because of this feeling, Arjuna became terribly upset and depressed, and he was about to be drowned in this terrible ocean of shoka moha, sorrow and delusion. And realizing that the only way to rescue Arjuna from this terrible sorrow, to lift him up from this ocean of sorrow and delusion, the only way is Atmagyana. And therefore Bhagavan started his teaching by saying, Ashocyanan vashochastvam pragyavadascha bhashase gataso nagatasonscha nanushocanti panditaha. Panditaha, those who are wise people, those who are sages and saints, those who have realized their real nature, they do not worry about who is living and who is dead. Appears to be very harsh. But the real purpose is birth and death are only shadows, delusions, relating to the body and the mind, which once again are passing phases, shadows of the infinite reality, of the Atman which alone is real. Only this can solve the problem of sorrow. That such a deep import this Kathamrita verses have. So I don't drink wine, but I drink the nectar of the divine name of Mother Kali. Those who look upon me from outside think I'm deeply drunk. When people used to see Sri Ramakrishna, some of the drunkards who knew about the effect of wine used to say, oh, he is dead drunk. He told Girish Chandra Ghosh and Kalipada Ghosh, the two great Bohemian drunkard disciples, hey, what kind of drink you have? I have much a superior drink which is imported from abroad. Just a little piece, little sip, and you will get intensely intoxicated. Girish Ghosh said, what is this? There is no brand of wine which I have not tasted. Then Sri Ramakrishna said, it is the wine of Divine Mother's Kali's name. Once when Sri Ramakrishna had gone to the Kali temple, finding his room empty, Holy Mother Sharada quickly went to his room, was sweeping the floor and tidying the bed and so on. By the time Sri Ramakrishna came back, and reeling as it were under intoxication, his eyes were red and his speech was not very clear. His steps were faltering, and when the mother was sweeping the floor, could not see Sri Ramakrishna enter. He entered the room and pushed her aside. She was startled. Then looked at him. Immediately she could understand the state of his mind. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, Ami ki maut khechi. Have I drunk wine? Then mother said, no, why should you do that? Maut khabe keno? Tahale ergam tolchi keno? Why am I faltering? Why am I shaking like this? I am unable to walk steadily. Then the mother said, Tumi Ma Kali's Bhavamrita khecho. You have drunk the Bhavamrita, the divine nectar of Mother Kali's Bhava, the great spiritual moods. Then Sri Ramakrishna was intensely pleased. Theek bolo cho. Meditate on these scenes. These scenes have been created by the divine incarnation in this age for us to meditate upon and get mukti. The avatara comes, the Bhagavata says, essentially to release people from bondage, take them out of delusion. What is the easiest way? Leela Chintana. Think of the divine Leela. If there is no Leela, how can you think about it? He creates hundreds of thousands of themes for meditation and upasana. So take any scene from Ramakrishna's life. For example, the scene which I described just now. Think of this. Sri Ramakrishna moving from the Kali temple to his room, fully intoxicated with the Divine Mother's name and absorbed in her consciousness, with faltering steps, eyes red, and speech unclear, and pushing the mother and asking, Ami ki mauत খেয়েছি তাহলে টলছি কেন? The mother replying, তুমি খালির ভাবামৃত খেয়েছো. And Sri Ramakrishna intensely pleased, ঠিক বলেছো, ঠিক বলেছো. Think of this scene, that's all. And mukti is just karatala amalagva. Just you have mukti just like that, the fruit in one's palm. It is so simple. Hundreds of thousands of such scenes have been created with the avatara. How simple. So that is the beauty of reading these books. The Kathamrita is the documented, authentic version of Sri Ramakrishna Leela. Just like the Leela Prasanga, divine play of Sri Ramakrishna, the avatara. সুরাপান করি না আমি, সুদা খাই জয় কালী বলে, মনু মাতালে মাতাল করে, মধু মাতালে মাতাল বলে. People call me a drunkard, but I have not drunk wine. I drink the divine intoxicating liquor of Divine Mother Kali's name. Gurudatta Shudloye প্রবৃত্তি তাই মশলা দিয়ে জ্ঞান শুড়িতে চুয়ার ভাটি পান করে মোর মনোমাতালে. My mind which is intoxicated, my mind which is a drunkard, takes the divine power-packed mantra given by the Guru, the Maha Mantra. Then with the masala of the pravritti, I prepare this wine in the Gyan Shurite, in the cauldron of knowledge in Jnana, and that I drink all the time and get intoxicated. Mool mantra, যন্ত্র ভরা শোধন করি বলে তারা প্রসাদ বলে এমন সুরা খেলে চতুর্বর্গ মিলে. This is Ram Prasad Kamalakanto. How simply, how directly, how sweetly they sang these songs. It is there in all the traditions and all the languages all over India. Whether they go to the Tamil Nadu, whether they go to Karnataka, whether they go to Andhra Pradesh or Kerala in the south, or go to Rajasthan and go to Uttar Pradesh or go to Uttarakhand, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and of course Bengal, anywhere in the world, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Mathura to Assam, the length and breadth of India, every place in India is filled with such saints and songs in all the languages that are available for us to sing, meditate, and become illumined. Ram Prasad says, prepare this kind of wine in your mind and keep drinking this divinely intoxicating wine of God's name. That name is with us. When somebody asked Ramakrishna in the Kathamrita, in the Gospel, I am unable to concentrate, I am unable to meditate, what should I do? Then Ramakrishna said, Smaran Manan to ache. Smarana and Manana. Finding Ananda in Smarana, Swami Smaranananda, or the most revered president of the order at present. Once I asked him, what a beautiful name you have got. Find joy in Smarana. Smarana means thinking of God, meditating upon Him, musing about Him, in whatever way, contemplating Him, Smarana Manana. Then Nididhyasana will follow automatically when the intensity of your devotion becomes very high. So it's a great joy. Spiritual journey is a great joy. Don't think it's a very tough and dry journey. And rejoice and be exceeding glad, as Christ has said. You can move around and with God's Leela Chintana, thinking of the Leela of God, the divine play of the Avatara, and you become intoxicated. Srijukta Keshav ke Thakur Snehapurna Nayane Dekhite Chen. So Ramakrishna is looking at Keshav with great love. Jana koto apnar lok. As if he has been known to him for eons and ages. He is Antaranga, so close to him, well known. Ar jano bhoy korite chen, Keshav pache anno karo arthat sangsharer hon. And he is terribly afraid, extremely filled with fear, lest Keshav Chandra Sen thinks himself as belonging to somebody else. That means the samsara, the world. Keshav, you are mine. Don't go to this world, the worldly attractions, and get lost. This is Ramakrishna's lessons for us. So Ramakrishna says, my devotees, where are you, my children? Dubahu tuliye dake aire tora ay chole, tore kripa kore, boshe achi virale, esheche notono manush, dekvi jodi ay chole. The famous song which is sung in the morning, Usha Kirtan, Ramakrishna's birthday, song written by Devendranath Majumdar, the householder disciple of Ramakrishna. So he raises both arms and asks people, where are you, my children? I am just waiting for you. Come unto me, ye that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give thee rest. These are the words of Christ in the Bible. I will give you rest. Come unto me. All the avatars have said this. Abhayam sarvabhutebhyo dadamyetat vratam mama. Ramachandra says, I give fearlessness, abhaya to all beings. That is my vow, vrata. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami mashucha. Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. All the incarnations of God have repeatedly testified, declared, come unto me, be fearless, rejoice and be exceeding glad. I will give you infinite joy, infinite bliss. Remove all the sorrow, ma shucha, don't be sorrowful. Don't belong to somebody else, you belong to me. Somebody means the samsara, the world. So he is looking at Keshav. He is afraid, as it were, that Keshav could belong to the samsara, and therefore he looks at him with great compassion, infinite, motiveless love and sings the following song. Tahar dike takaiya abar gan dhurilen. It's a beautiful, touching song which he sings again with respect to Narendranath. কথা বলতে ডরায়, না বলিলেও ডরায়, মনে সন্দেহ হয়, পাছে তোমার ধনে হারায় হারায়. Harai. Rai means the Divine Lord, the Mahaprabhu. Oh Lord, I am afraid to speak and afraid not to speak also, and a doubt has arisen in my mind lest I lose you. Toma harai, you are my treasure, you are my dhana, you are my wealth. I am afraid lest I lose you. Harai. Amra jani je mon tor, dilam tore ei mantor. Ramakrishna used to make a pun. He was a master of pun on the word mantra. Mantra means a divine mystic syllable which we get from the Guru, the mantra. Mantra is pronounced in colloquial Bengali as mantor. And he used to make pun on this word mon tor. Tor means yours. Mon means the mind. The mind is yours. So the Guru says, Amra jani je mon tor. The Guru gives the mantra and says, now mon tor. Now it's your path to take this mantra, repeat it and get elevated. Dilam tore shei mon tor. A mantor to dilam. I have given you this great mantra, Maha mantra. Ekhon mon tor. Now it's up to you. Your mind will know what to do with this. Jai mantra vipadate tori torai. I've given you that mantra which will save you from great catastrophe and terrible dangers. It will save you. Mananat trayate iti mantra. Mantra is called mantra. Man means mananat. Tra means trayate. That which rescues you, saves you, protects you in great danger from catastrophe, rescues you, that is called a mantra. Amra jani je montor, dilam tore shei montor, ekhon mon tor. অর্থাৎ সব ত্যাগ করে ভগবানকে ডাক, তিনি সত্য আর সব অনিত্য, তাকে না লাভ করলে কিছুই হলো না এই মহামন্ত্র. This is the essence of the teachings of the Avatara, essence of the Kathamrita. Repeatedly Sri Ramakrishna says, give up everything and call on God. About the Gita, he said, you know what is the essence of the Gita? You will get it by repeating it 10 times. Gita, 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 Gita means becomes Tagi, Tagi, Tagi. Tagi means Tyagi. Both are same. That means give up everything which is worldly, which is apart from God, and take refuge in God. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam braja. Take refuge in God. তাকে লাভ না করলে কিছুই হলো না, কারণ তিনি সত্য আর সব অনিত্য. God alone is real, all else is unreal, and unless you realize God, nothing really matters. Iha cheda vedit atha satyamasti na chediha vedin mahati vinashti. If you realize the truth in this very life, then your life becomes blessed. If you do not, then great is your loss. Terrible catastrophe. What is that? Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Birth after birth, death after that go round and round and round infinitely in the cycle of birth and death. Get released from here. And the avatar has come and giving you the surest and the easiest path. Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam, Pavitramidamuttamam, Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam, Susukham Kartum Avyayam. Very easy. What is that? Sravana Manana of the Avatar Leela. Think about him. Manmana Bhava, Madhubhakto, Madhyaji, Mam Namaskuru. Thinking of the Lord, meditating upon him, constantly getting lost in his glory. Easiest way, Susukham Kartum Avyayam. Its eternal will be the result that you get out of it, the phala. Abhar upaveshon kuriya bhaktadir shunge katha koitechen. Again he sat down and started talking to the devotees. তাহাকে জল খাইবার জন্য উদ্যোগ হইতেছে। হল ঘরের একপাশে একটি ব্রাহ্মভক্ত পিয়ানো বাজাইতেছেন। They were arranging to offer him some sweets and water, just hospitality, because a holy man should not go away from a householder's house without being fed. That's the tradition. Grahasthir amangal hobe bola. The householder will get, harm will befall him if a holy man leaves without being properly fed. One corner of the hall there was a piano, and one of the Brahma Bhaktas was playing on the piano. Sri Ramakrishna Hashyavadan. Balaker Nyay piano kache giya dadaiya dekhitechen. Sri Ramakrishna was smiling like a child. He went near the piano and curiously looking on how this is being played. একটু পরেই অন্তঃপুরে তাকে লইয়া যাওয়া হইল। জল খাইবেন আর মেয়েরাও প্রণাম করিবেন। All the women were inside the Antapura, the inner courtyard. So Ramakrishna was taken inside. All the women will bow down to him, make pranam, and he will be given some sweets and water by the women devotees. ঠাকুর রামকৃষ্ণ জলসেবা হইল। এইবারে তিনি গাড়িতে উঠিলেন। So after eating something, he came out and he entered the carriage. Brahma Bhaktara সকলে গাড়ির কাছে দাঁড়াইয়ে আছেন. All the Brahma devotees were standing near the carriage which is just about to move. Kamal Kutir হইতে গাড়ি দক্ষিণেশ্বর মন্দির অভিমুখে যাত্রা করিল. So from Kamal Kutir, Keshav Chandra Sen's place, the carriage was moving towards Dakshineshwar. So these are great scenes which are created. Read this, think about this, meditate upon this, rejoice and be exceeding glad. Tushanticha ramanticha. The Gita says in the 10th chapter, 9th verse, 10.9. Madhbhakta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushanticha ramanticha. My devotees, Madhbhakta, madgata prana, those who have all the energies and prana completely absorbed in me, gone to me, bodhayanta parasparam, talking to each other about me, kathayantascha mam nityam, constantly discussing me, thinking of me, meditating of me, tushanticha ramanticha, they rejoice and they are extremely happy. Let us also think of the divine Leela. Every little scene, Sri Ramakrishna talking to Keshav, Sri Ramakrishna singing, Sri Ramakrishna going to Samadhi, Sri Ramakrishna suddenly getting absorbed in the infinite mood of the highest Samadhi, coming back like a child, standing in the piano and watching how the piano is being played. Sri Ramakrishna drinking water, Sri Ramakrishna coming out, always Sahasravadan, always a smile on his lips, was immersed in the divine bliss. So let us all pray that a particle of that divine bliss should come to us. Premeka bindum chiradagda chitte vishancha chittam kurunas sushantam. Swami Abhedananda's famous hymn and the mother says, Premeka bindum, one particle of the divine prema, divine love of God, pour into my heart which is dry, parched, and make my heart calm, peaceful, and full of joy. That is the prayer. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampathruta Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.